For today's oil painting, I decided to create a portrait using some really intense greens. This is kind of a warm-up sketch for the week, but it's also just to get me back in the flow of painting eyes. I haven't painted eyes in at least a couple weeks. I like to do a lot of abstraction over the eyes, and this one's no different. As you'll see at the end of this painting, I do decide to get crazy with some really intense greens over the eyes, but before that, before I even get to that point though, I decided to paint this as if I was not going to do that. I get the eyes all the way down to the last detail. I even put the little reflections in the eyes, those little highlights in the eyes before I paint over them. And some of you may wonder, why would I do such a thing? Why would I take a perfectly good portrait and paint over the eyes and ruin it? Some people think I'm ruining it. Some people love it. I personally love it. It's just my style. I like to create a painting that's a little bit abstract, a little bit expressionism, a little bit impressionism, maybe a little bit of realism. I don't think I get quite into full realism, but somewhere around the impressionism realism is kind of my cutoff point as far as how much detail I like to put into my paintings. I don't like to spend a lot of time with a lot of detail. It's just how I operate. I like to play around with abstraction. So this painting though is definitely just a straight up impressionistic style painting. Right before I decide to go with the really strong greens, I am approaching this with some very subtle colors like usual. I'm using some dark browns in the shadows, and then it gets almost a little bit green, like a bluish green in the highlights. That's about as complex as the colors really are as far as, you know, getting the base colors done. But once that's done, once I feel like I have this painting done, I had the really nice warm up of getting the eyes, the nose, the mouth to about all the same level. Then I decide, you know what, let's just paint over these eyes. I don't like to hold anything too precious. I love the fact that I can paint something all the way down to the last detail and just paint over it. I've done it so many times now. I know a lot of artists have a heart attack when they see me do it, but for me, I love it. I love that freedom of knowing this thing could be just demolished in a second just by painting one brush stroke over the top of the eyes, the nose, the mouth, whatever detail I worked on. But I can always bring it back. That's the nice thing about being a freehand painter. I'm not held captive by outlines. I'm not held captive by a perfectly traced drawing or grids or guides. If I paint over something and I do decide to bring it back to full detail, I can do that. It's not a big deal. That's the nice thing about being a freehand painter. So anyway, that's kind of the rundown with this painting. You're going to see me just using the usual block-in method of just getting the big shapes and then the smaller shapes and then the details. And then I just go right over the eyes and start in with the abstraction. And this one was pretty satisfying. I think the greens worked out pretty well because I did have a nice set of base colors that I knew would work well with this color combination. So let me know what you think in the comments. I have not come up with a name for this painting, but feel free to leave in the comments the name that you would like to call this. And by the way, if you do want to learn to paint a little bit looser, a little bit more with impressionism, expressionism, go over to my Patreon account. I have a bunch of tutorials on there. I'm trying to add a few new ones every month. And I also have art downloads that you can download. You can print it out. It's super high res, so it'll print out really sharp at fairly good sizes, you know, anywhere from a 9x12 to 11x14s, and probably even bigger than that. But you can download those, put them on your wall, and have a good time with those, frame them up, make them look nice. So with that out of the way, I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to put some music on, some nice chill ambient music, so you can just watch this, sit back, relax, and watch the making of this painting with a bunch of greens. But I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on the titles. So here we go.